think this is being streamed, and the question is about starting capital, essentially, and your strategy around that.
Well, mine's very easy. We don't have any venture capital, and for the first 10 years in business, we didn't even have a line of credit. So we only purchased a new vehicle. We have 150 vehicles now and 300 employees. We only purchased a new vehicle if we had a new contract. Our business is 80% corporate, so we do commuter shuttles, we do metro shuttles, a lot of the buses you see around, we do government shuttles. So when we won a new contract, we would take that to the bank and they would give us the funding to buy the vehicles. So that's great, not having to borrow any money. Well, 10 years into it, we did get a line and we got an SBA loan to build our own facility. So we did have to do that, and that was fairly simple. But I think my advice, and how do I do it now? Well, I actually personally guarantee every loan that I have, and there have been times when there has been a lien on my house. But we didn't use our personal funds ever. You know, those are always there for an emergency, and hopefully, you know, we won't have an emergency. But my business plan is pretty simple that way.
Yeah, my first response to a venture person that would tell you, we'll use all your money, deplete your resources. That sounds like a great word, deplete your resources. That to me is code for use all your money so you have to 100% rely on me. So I don't like that idea at all, not at all. I think you need to show that you're committed, which is what they want you to show. And committed can be financially, but it can be blood, sweat, and tears too. So if you would normally make $100,000 and you're doing this for free to get it off the ground, that's committed. That's real money. So I don't think you should use your family money or all of your family money. I think it's really risky to do that. And there's a whole, we could probably do a whole class on just financing alone. But I raise venture capital and then start companies. It is high risk and extremely stressful. We were talking about it before. I think the statistics are 90% of men or women that do that fail. So not always do you get a return. And it's a lot like winning the lottery. So it can be very, very stressful to do it. So if there's any other way on the face of the earth to make that happen, where you grow slower, or you get angel investment, or something different than going out and getting large sums of money, I would say to do it. And I think the definition of wealthy doesn't need to be $1 billion. It could be a great $2 or $3 million a year in revenue company could create a great lifestyle. So there's a lot of ways to do it.
I didn't take any money for the first almost 10 years. And what I did do, though, if I couldn't hire someone to do something, I figured out how to do it myself. So I wore many hats, worked very, very long hours, and got some consulting contracts that paid the bills for me, and whatever was left over I used to either buy services that I couldn't do myself. But I worked a combination of consulting and software, so that the consulting business helped me fund the development of the software. And then I also got, at the beginning you can't even get a loan, I found, and so it was only when I didn't need the money that the banks were willing to loan me the money. And so I went and I paid $10,000 a year to have a line of credit that I never touched. And then finally in 2005, I tapped into it. I called the bank manager. I think the line of credit was a couple $100,000. I called him and I said, I need $1 million. So I went and I spoke to him for an hour, told him what I was doing, he could see the passion in my eyes, and he gave it to me right there on the spot. And I called him up. He said, anytime you need money, call me. So I kept calling. I got up to $5 million. Part of that was secured by my house, and part of it was secured by the assets in the company. So you have to find people who believe in you, but in order for them to believe in you, you have to kind of sacrificed yourself along the way and shown some success.
So I've worn 3 different types of money hats. My first company I funded myself, and when we wanted to develop a commercial product, we went out with to go after SBIR money from the federal government, the Small Business Innovative Research dollars that allow you to retain some or most of the intellectual property rights of whatever it is that you're developing. And we did things like help desk support, those kind of government contracts to fund the other parts of the company that were focused on building a commercial product. And we had a lot more control of what we were doing and could really determine our own destiny. When I ran venture-funded companies, you're really sometimes running the company to funding milestones. So you may get a bit of money from a venture capitalist, but you've got to hit certain milestones, and then your focus, instead of running the business, is really focused on the milestones. And then I ran a public company where you're running the company to meet quarterly expectations and raising money on Wall Street, which is a completely different animal and a very different type of scenario. Out of all three, the one that I preferred the most was having my own company and financing it myself, because you have a lot more control of what you're doing.
So the Dandelion Patch, I purchased the business for $125,000 in 2005, and the seller financed me. So I paid payments over 2 years. That's how I originally got into the business. And then it was very important for me to create a cash flow analysis that could show my bank that I could justify a line of credit. So I ended up with a line of credit. And things were great until last year, and my bank called my line, and they gave me 30 days to pay back $125,000, and frankly, I didn't have it. The business didn't have it. And so that was when I had to dip into personal resources, and I actually had to pay that off. That was a big decision when you're a business owner to decide whether you're in or out, and I'm in it for the long haul. But a couple things that I can't believe Christina didn't mention was bartering. I mean, if you have a service, barter that service for anything and everything that you can possibly do. So if you need a web done, then find somebody that does web, and guess what? You can barter your services for that. There's a lot of ways that you can build your business around a barter system. One time last year, I got in a really, I was cash strapped, and I have a retail store, and I needed money, and I needed to pay a bill, and I needed to pay it in 30 days, not the line of credit. And so I went to my top 12 customers, and I offered them a 33% discount, essentially. I said, I will give you $1,000 gift cards if you give me $1,500 in return. And within 1 hour, I had $12,000. So there's some ways that you can be creative to find some short-term financing opportunities. And then last thing, I just want to make sure that when you build a business, at the end of the day, you can have passion and you can have loyalty and all those things. It is about the numbers. You have to figure out how to make a business that makes money. And so make sure you start with that in mind.
That's great. And in my class at GW, a lot of times people are literally just getting started with their businesses, or they want to do it part-time. And one of the things that is in a private equity financing guide for women that was developed for our class by Patty Abramson and Wendy Kanarek, who co-founded the Women's Growth Capital Fund, which existed during the dot-com era. Friends, family, foolhardy. That's where most entrepreneurs start in terms of raising money. Is what they have as sort of the first level. You go to your friends, you go to your family, or you go to people who just give you money, and even if it's yourself. And then the second thing is when you talked about bartering, Heidi was talking about bartering. One of the things that helped me when I had a cadre of female entrepreneurs that were working for me when I had a consulting firm was I paid them when the client paid me. That was just the deal and so sometimes it's just the little things to get started that I've noticed help people through. And then once you've got something, like Heidi is saying, you need something that makes money, you can just make that bigger. A lot of times it works. Any more questions?